At the ancient parts, we talk about history, origin, and culture.
Yes.
And today I want to bring to us the Titanic. It was constructed with the latest technology and innovation of its time. The cost of construction then was around 7.5 million US dollars. It was comfortable. Every touch of fashion and design was put into it. The engineers and the architects considered it unsinkable. There are statements that were made that even God himself could not sink it.
So sad.
While it was a ship or a vessel of transportation from one point to another across the sea, it was an embodiment of pride and arrogance. Because men seemed to have vested their confidence on this vessel based on the materials and things or knowledge and wisdom that was put in its construction. So before a fall, always pride comes, so they say. And we want to consider how the fall of Titanic or its sinking can reflect other aspects of our life now that we're talking of Noah, even where we are as a people today. And that brings us to today's episode.
A Tower of Folly.
Tower of Folly. Now, we had stopped at a point where Noah had settled, and then the sin of Ham came in, which we described in our previous episode, and the consequent curse to Canaan. Now, other siblings, Shem and Ham, they were also reproducing, and generations were coming forth. Approximately 100 years down the line, we find now many people, children are born, then children give birth to children, and the generation is increasing. And one man stands out. His name is Nimrod. Now, Nimrod is the son of Cush. Cush is the son of Ham. So Nimrod is Ham's grandchild. Strange, the house of Ham still remains our point of focus. So what is this thing that is standing out about Nimrod, and what does the Bible say about Nimrod?
Okay. Genesis chapter 10 verse 9. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord.
Nice. When we hear about a mighty hunter, our thoughts, especially those who are on this side of the planet, move to the point where a man is with an arrow or a bow and pursuing animals to kill.
Yes.
But what was Moses really trying to communicate by, it's not just, it was said then that a mighty hunter before the Lord was Nimrod. So what did they really mean? It, in one sense, means he was in pursuit of animals. He was a hunter, like literal hunting. But in the other aspect, it also talks about him having he was charismatic. So he had the ability to bring people together and form armies. So he would subdue others who are opposed to his army through violence. Like we know, the rise of kingdoms, you take out other nations so that you establish your authority. So this was the kind of setting that Nimrod found himself. And his kingdom started at Babel. And that is what verse 10 says.
Yes.
So read for us the 10th
And
verse.
the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and Erech, and Akkad, and Calneh, in the land of Shinar.
Nice. So we find in the land of Shinar or Shinar, that we find that's the beginning of Nimrod's kingdom. So to establish a kingdom, you must have subjects.
Yes.
Then you must have a territory. So the territory we have talked about. Now, who are the subjects of this kingdom? But before we go to those subjects, we also have to understand that when God is creating, He's the king. So we, the creatures, are the subjects, then the territory is the earth where they belong. But now we find another kingdom emerging. Is it belonging to the alternative culture, or is it belonging to the original culture? So if we get the subjects of this kingdom, then we can know where they belong, and with Nimrod as their king. So that takes us to
Genesis chapter 11.
Yes.
It says verse 5.
Yes.
And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of men build it.
Nice. So if you start from verse 1, it gives you the idea of men moving from the east, away from the east. And every time that is mentioned, it was mentioned when Cain was moving away from the east.
Yes.
And that it was interpreted as moving away from the presence of God. So these men are moving away from the east. They are moving away from the presence of God. So it gives us a hint as we come to the 11th chapter that these are a rebellious generation. Noah's ark had stopped at some point, but men began to spread. So they rebelled from God and moved away from God. So Nimrod becomes their king. And then the verse you've read gives us a very interesting thing that reminds us of Genesis chapter 6, that God came to see what the sons or children of men are doing.
Yes.
As we got from that point when men began to increase and daughters were born unto them, these were representing people who had rebelled from God. So even in this case, when it talks about children of men, then it means sons of God must have remained somewhere.
Yes.
The original culture. And they are few. So a majority moved, they are called children of men, to build a city and a tower. Now what is wrong with all this? Number one, God had given instruction to Noah and his children to multiply and fill the earth. But what is the tower coming to do? Is it fulfilling that purpose? Now read for us.
Yes, Genesis chapter 11 verse 4.
Yes.
And they said, go to, let us build a city and a tower,
Yes.
whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth.
Wow. Now, it's like the idea of building this city and tower was a reaction out of fear and doubt. God had given Noah and the family a covenant that he's not going to destroy the earth with flood. But the building of this tower, it was to reach heaven up.
Yes.
So that gives us an indicator that even if God decides to bring the flood again, we are safe. So their safety was not on obedience to God, but on their works. And that brings us to salvation by works. So they distrusted God. The second point of their salvation was salvation in sin, in disobedience. So they go with this alternative culture, stretch it so much that in their disobedience they still find a way to be saved. And God comes to investigate this matter. We find God investigating from time to time.
Yeah.
And it's become his habit, a system of justice. Yes.
Yes. So Genesis chapter 11 verse 6 says, and the Lord said, behold, the people is one, and they have all one language, and this they begin to do, and now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do.
Yes.
Go to, let us go down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
2 points to note. These are people walking away from the presence of God. They are children of disobedience. The second point to note is that whatever they've set their minds to do, they will do. And that reminds us, before the flood, that they were so wicked that their thoughts were continually evil.
Yeah.
So they were committed to sin, to defiance. Why? The first point, there are people who considered it evil what God did to the previous generation, the flood.
Yes.
They had a problem with God's judgment. So they also had a problem with God's covenant. They couldn't trust God. The second point, the people who believed that whatever happened, the flood, it was just a natural cause. Like they didn't believe in God. So that made them effective rebellious people. So this is a group of rebellious generation. God comes, confounds their language, and then they are scattered abroad. It's an act of mercy because God did not want to destroy them. God is still looking for a people who would stand for what is right, even in this time.
Amen. Dear viewer, we have seen how the ancient culture, God's original culture, and the alternative culture is at play. And as they build a tower, people build their towers this day to make their own name, They want to find a way of saving themselves. But when you read Proverbs 18 verse 10, it says, the name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous run into it and they are safe. Do you know the name of the Lord? do you desire to have a personal walk with Jesus? Then He will build your name. Thank you.
Thank you.
Amen.